One lithium cell hits 900 degrees Celsius, ignites its neighbors and needs no outside air. No spark left to snuff, no oxygen to smother. Here is exactly how a fire that carries its own oxygen starts. Here's the strange part. Electric vehicle fires are actually rarer than gas car fires. But once one starts, it behaves like nothing firefighters trained on. Crews dump thousands of gallons of water, walk away, and hours or even days later the same pack bursts back into flame. Why won't it stay out? The answer is hiding inside a single cell. Let's open the box. Inside every cell sit four simple parts. Two electrodes, the anode and the cathode, are the plus and minus ends. A liquid soaks between them so charged particles can shuttle back and forth. And separating the two electrodes is a plastic film thinner than a human hair, just a few microns across. That film is the whole safety story. Its only job is to keep the two electrodes from ever touching. If they touch, all the energy stored in the cell tries to dump at once. Now zoom out. A single cell is about the size of a AA battery or a soda can. An electric vehicle pack crams hundreds to thousands of them together, packed millimeters apart, like books jammed on a shelf. Thousands of tiny power sources, each holding real energy, each kept safe by a sheet of plastic you could tear with a fingernail. Every one of them is a good neighbor, until one isn't. So what makes the first cell fail? 3 roads led to the same cliff. 1. Physical damage. A crash crushes the cell or road debris punches it, and the electrodes get shoved together. 2. A manufacturing defect. A microscopic metal fleck grows into a spike called a dendrite that slowly stabs through that plastic film. 3. Overcharging or overheating, pushing too much energy in or too much heat from outside. Different starts, one ending. Each one lets the two electrodes touch when they never should. That contact is an internal short, a shortcut the energy was never meant to take. And the moment it happens, current floods through that tiny point and it starts to heat. Not glowing yet, just warm, then hot, then very hot in a spot the size of a pinhead. A short is only the match. What turns one warm spot into a 900 degrees Celsius fire is what happens next. Here's where warm becomes unstoppable. The heat from that short kicks off a chemical reaction. But this reaction releases heat of its own. That fresh heat speeds up the reaction, which makes even more heat, which speeds it up again. A loop that feeds itself. Engineers have a name for a reaction that makes the heat that drives it faster. Thermal runaway. Picture a snowball rolling downhill, except every turn makes it heavier and faster. Once it's rolling, pushing back does nothing. Inside the cell, the temperature doesn't creep, it spikes. From warm to past 900 degrees Celsius in seconds. That's hot enough to melt aluminum. And here is the cruel part. This is a one-way ratchet. Once thermal runaway starts inside a cell, nothing you do to that cell stops it. Not water, not colds, not cutting the power. The reaction is now driving itself from the inside. You cannot stop this cell. The best you can do is try to outrun it before it reaches the next one. Now the twist that breaks every rule of firefighting. On a normal fire, you take away the oxygen and it dies. Smother it, foam it, done. This fire doesn't need your air. As the cell tears itself apart, the cathode, that plus side material, breaks down chemically and releases oxygen. Its own oxygen from inside. So the fire is fuel and oxygen in the same sealed package. Cover it with foam and the reaction underneath keeps breathing off its own supply. That's the whole reason the title says zero air. The cell carries what it needs. It gets worse. The cell also vents a cloud of gas that is both flammable and toxic. One of them, hydrogen fluoride, is dangerous to breathe on its own. And that vented gas can ignite in the open, adding fireballs on top of a fire you already can't smother. So the two oldest firefighting tricks, cut the air, smother it, are useless here. The cell brought its own oxygen to the party. One cell down. Now watch it spread. Remember, this cell is sitting millimeters from its neighbor. And it's radiating heat at 900 degrees Celsius. That radiant heat pours sideways into the next cell, cooking it from the outside. Push any cell past its own runaway threshold, and it flips into the same self-feeding loop. So cell 2 ignites. Then it cooks cell 3, which cooks cell 4. A chain reaction marching across the pack, cell by cell, each one lighting the next like dominoes made of fire. This is the answer to why it reignites. A pack has hundreds of cells and they don't all go at once. Some sit in the middle, insulated, taking their time. So a firefighter cools the surface, the visible flames die, everyone relaxes, and a buried cell deep in the pack finally crosses its threshold and lights the whole thing again. One failed cell doesn't stay one. It becomes 10, then 100, spread out over minutes, hours, or days. Put it together and the mystery dissolves. A pack fire won't go out because 3 things stack at once. It makes its own oxygen, so smothering fails. It holds enormous stored energy, released cell by cell over time. And the pack is a sealed metal box, so water on the outside can't reach the cells still cooking inside. So what actually works? Not smothering, cooling. Crews use huge volumes of water, not to starve the fire but to drag heat away faster than the reaction makes it. Some departments simply submerge the whole car in a tank of water for hours. Then comes the fire watch, parking the wreck alone and guarding it for days, waiting for the last buried cell. One cell hits 900 degrees Celsius, releases its own oxygen and lights its neighbors. Zero outside air required. That's the chain start to finish. So that's the chain. One short thermal runaway, self-made oxygen and cell after cell falling like dominoes until the whole pack has burned. Which raises the obvious next question. If a single cell can do all that, how do engineers stop it from spreading? Next time we open the defenses, firewalls between cells, coolant channels, and the battery's own brain watching every cell.